When Judy lost her husband Pete, after 30 years of marriage, the world went dark. They'd built a beautiful life together, raising kids, sharing dreams, and planning adventures still to come. Then her husband's life was taken tragically, and grief settled in like a storm. She wasn't just mourning her husband, she was grieving the life they'd built and the moments her children would never have with their dad. But somewhere in that heartbreak, a small spark remained, the courage to keep saying yes. Yes to the unknown. Yes to healing. Yes to life. Welcome to the podcast, Judy McCreary Perkins. Welcome, Judy. Judy, it is so great to have you here today. It's been a real journey with your life and all that you've been through. I'm so excited for you to share a part of your story and what you've been through. And I just want to thank you first for even being here. And I want you to just start out giving us a little backstory on where you were in your life when when this tragedy happened for you.
Hi, Robin. Thanks so much for having me. A little bit about my background, everyone. I was born to two college professors in Cleveland, Ohio. I have one sibling, and he had special needs. And the fact that I lived in a family with a sibling with special needs, it really shaped me in ways that I only recently understood because I felt like my needs were constantly second. I had to put them on the back burner. There was a lot of stress around that, and so I became very small to just make everybody happy. And that started a pattern in my life. A lot of times having a sibling who is ill, most of the focus and money goes toward their support. And what happened was I really grew into an adult who suppressed my own needs. And I thought that was a great idea. I appeared strong and self-sufficient, and I struggled to set boundaries, tried to be happy all the time at the expense of authenticity. And not being emotional, I really wore that as a badge of honor. It'll be easier for everyone if I'm low maintenance and I don't have needs. I became a Christian in college, and while my relationship with God was a great strength, there was a 90s Christianity culture of don't be emotional, always be okay, everything's always great. And really, that fit me like a glove. I wore that. I could do that. I thought I can do this. And it was even supported and really even celebrated in the church that I was a part of at the time. It was a long time before I really felt like I could address and heal from the false paradigms that I learned growing up. I met a wonderful man and got married at age 24. After some really hard infertility struggles, I ultimately had four children, an amazing 30-year marriage where I taught dance. I ran a school in my home. We homeschooled. It was lots of fun and a great time. And although the things I told myself about be small, everything is better when you don't have needs, stayed with me. And so I never really fully understood why many times I didn't feel seen. It didn't make that much sense to me. And it was a while before I would really learn what that was.
So, Judy, you had a 30-year marriage with your husband, Pete. Tell me what happened. You had a tragic moment in this, and tell me about what happened when this all occurred.
So back in 2018, we talked for, I don't know, half an hour, and he said he was leaving work in 20 minutes and he was going to be on his way home. But he never made it home. I was, there was, It was a very sudden loss. He was on a motorcycle. He bought a motorcycle like 8 months earlier. He had all the protective gear on. He'd taken all the safety classes, but that doesn't protect you from someone pulling out on a side street and not looking. And so he was hit by a distracted driver about a half a mile from my house. My daughter, one of my daughters, was worried and went to find him on Find My Friends and came upon the accident. I had been dropping my son off at a friend's house, and she found him. The police had just gotten there, and they called me. I drove to the accident where the accident was, and I have never heard screams like that before in my life coming from my daughter. She was inside the police car, and I got out And she came running out screaming, and there were two policemen there with their hats on their chests. And it was very surreal. They said he didn't suffer. And I was so confused because I had no idea what was I was like, this can't be real. And I kept saying, this isn't true. This isn't true. How could this happen? He was killed instantly by someone who pulled out of a side street. I remember saying, why is he on the road? Can we take him? I didn't Can we take him off the road? The road is hot. And they said, no, he needs to stay there. And it was just a blur of um, crying, and some someone showed up and was reading the 23rd Psalm, and I don't know where he came from, but he was, a pastor from somewhere, and it was just a lot of confusion. We went back a little bit later to the house, and there were people there, and people brought food over, and I was just sitting in this chair. And finally, a friend of mine came up to me and she said, Judy, you've been sitting in this chair for 6 hours. And I had no idea. It was already 1 in the morning. And so my girls and I went to sleep that night holding hands and lying in the bed holding hands. And we thought we didn't want to go to sleep because if we woke up in the morning and it was still the same, we would know it was true. We went to a lot of grief counseling after that, but it was really hard for me to access my feelings. Just wanted to talk about the kids. They would ask me, "How are you doing?" And because I never really thought about my needs, I thought, I don't know. I don't want to talk about it. That makes me uncomfortable. But I was faced suddenly with recreating my life because I was the only one now making decisions about how to lead and guide my grieving children, my family.
So, Judy, here you are, devastated, in shock, holding on to your children, being strong for them, trying to manage their emotions, and you are heading into a very challenging time in your life. And this seems like you're heading towards a dark moment of reality for you. And tell me what happened next. Like, what did you do in this next period of your life?
Some people would say, not everybody, some people would say, oh, he's in a better place. Don't ever say that to anybody because in your best moments, maybe you might think that, but more likely is like, okay, but I want him to be here with me. I want him to be holding my hand. I want him to be helping me make parenting and life decisions. My kids were really hurting. One was started struggling with serious depression. And in that, I saw snapshots of growing up with my brother, and that at times became paralyzing for me. When I saw my kids hurting, that was the hardest. And I would pray and I'd say, how could you, God, take their father from them? I have four. One just got married, the other one's in college, the other one's in high school, the other one was in middle school, and they needed their dad to help them through the turbulent teen years. I gained 40 pounds. Apparently, I'm not one of those people that gets stressed and loses weight. Found this out, but gained 40 pounds. I couldn't sing in church. People said, "What can we do?" And I said, "Invite me to things. You know, invite your widows to things in your church because life goes on and couples keep getting together, and then all of a sudden you're not a couple anymore." So I said, invite me. Or when people took care of things where I didn't have to make a decision, like rides for the kids or changing the oil in my car, planting flowers in my yard, even little things like that meant so much. We went to the Philippines on a service trip. Before we arrived, Pete had sent boxes of tools for us to use while we were there, and they arrived during the time we were there, so we felt like he was still with us. I knew that I needed to say yes to opportunities like the Philippines. And I also knew I needed to face my grief head on. I knew it was time in my life when I knew I needed to take up space, not just squeeze into small spaces that we were never meant to fit into. I needed to learn how to have emotional needs and to express them. We went on an Alaskan cruise that Pete and I had scheduled for our 30th anniversary. He died 1 month prior to that. We'd wanted to go for years. So my input is always go. If it is in your realm of responsibility, go because you don't know what the next month will hold. So the next year, on the first anniversary of his death, I took my kids. I was still angry with God. When I saw them struggling, I would wrestle and I would say, Pete would have been a father, a better father than you. Take care of them, help them not struggle. How could you let this happen? I wrestled with how someone's life could be saved from an accident because the angels were protecting them and Pete wasn't. I didn't understand that. One of my kids went up to a minister after church and said, So, does that mean the angels weren't protecting my dad? That stuff, it was very difficult things to reconcile. And I had to eventually come to grips with being okay with the unanswered questions of life. That took a lot of wrestling with me. And on the last day of the cruise, I went up to the third deck and it was raining. No one else was out there, and I walked back and forth for 3 hours. Normally, I'm inspired by mountains and glaciers and wildlife, and I was there in Alaska and I was looking at the most beautiful things I've ever seen, and I refused to be impressed. I was angry. I was hurt, but I didn't want to leave until I could find some resolution. My daughter had written a song about finding God in struggle, and one of the lyrics was God saying, I'm here, don't run from me. And I meditated on those lyrics. I wanted to run from God because I felt hurt by him. But I also knew this couldn't be the end of my story. So I stayed up there in the rain on that third deck. And as I prayed in honesty, yet seeking reconciliation, somehow the mountains began to be beautiful again. Somehow during that time, they became big enough to carry all of my grief. And the channel started changing for me.
So, Judy, here you are trying to reconcile your emotions with God, trying to put your arms around your kids, and really trying to move forward with all that's happened to you. Tell me now, how did you get your thoughts and your heart together, and what were the steps you took to move you forward into your next part of your life?
Well, I finished the cruise really want to experience life and wanting that for my kids. And I knew I had to do it. I couldn't do it once I was well wrapped and everything was good. I knew I had to do it while I was hurting, while I was scared, while I was uncomfortable. I had to move through it imperfectly because I thought if this happened and I don't do something with this, what a waste it would be. So I knew I needed to continue to grow and hope and engage. And so I was involved already in grief therapy and grief recovery because I had no chance to say goodbye to my husband. My healthy husband was on his way back from work and was gone 15 minutes later. It's not necessarily harder than when there is preparation, but it is different. So what helped me? It was saying yes to opportunities. We went to another Philippines service trip in 2019 and 2020. And while we were there, we met several new friends from a few churches in Alaska. That summer of 2020, in the middle of the COVID storm, three of my kids and I went to Alaska to spend the summer there. I would drive into the mountains and pray and cry and sing. And I felt like I was breathing oxygen for the first time in a long time. I started to heal. By the end of the summer, we decided to move there.
So, Judy, you took this trip, and on this trip, I love the way you really came to that epiphany like, I'm not going to waste this pain. I am going to grab onto this. If I have to live through this, I'm going to use it for something purposeful. And you put your arms around your kids. You picked up when you found refreshment in Alaska and you moved your life there, a whole new life. That's a big place to move to. That's a big transition. So, what did you do from there? I can see now you've got the attitude of like, I'm going forward, I'm moving on. So, from there, what were your next steps to your new life?
Well, I knew my mind had to expand. My relationship circle needed to expand. The way I thought about myself. I remember talking to a good friend of mine, Renee, and I said, Renee, I'm just a homeschooling mom and I teach kids dance classes. And she said, Judy, I never want to hear you say that again. One of the best things anyone's ever said to me. Not because that wasn't enough, but because I was using that identity to hold me back from opening up a whole new adventure in life. I was using it to keep myself in
Wait,
a box.
Judy, it was the word just that you used that made it not good because I'm just, that's
Yeah.
not That's not a low position in life.
Right,
That's an
right.
important role for
Yeah.
any woman to hold. But in your mind, you needed to see it and the value that it was. Anyway, that's good. Go on.
So I decided I needed to say yes to new things that were scary. I needed to, yes, I will climb up that mountain in Alaska, even if it takes me twice as long as all the little kids. Yes, I will go to the Philippines and serve over Christmas, and take my kids and even a couple of their friends along with us. Yes, I will drive 63 hours from Ohio to Alaska, the most magnificent drive I've ever been on to recreate my life. Not
Mm,
yes, that's driven by people pleasing, but yes, to push past my fears.
mm,
I checked in with a new grief counselor who, after talking, she said, let's talk for, a half an hour or so and just make sure this is a good fit. Afterwards, she said, Judy, I don't think you need more grief counseling. I think you need life coaching. And I
mm.
thought, oh, what is that? What is life coaching? So I looked into that, and I started with my coach, well, one of my first life coaches. His name's Dave Mitchell from New Jersey. And then from there, I also someone introduced me to Live Your Vision, where I began to learn how to develop and distribute, understand the skills I had that I gained from my story. Through coaching, I learned to slow down, to speed up. I had been frantic to matter, to have something in my life that I could give. And I needed to slow down to create a necessary path forward. I addressed the dynamics where I wasn't authentic, and I stopped seeing emotions or my needs as something to be fixed. And I was able to get to the root of why I played down who I was, as it was keeping me from possibilities and from growth. I learned that self-care was responsible and not selfish. So I prioritize things that bring me life. Because I'm an external processor, connecting with trusted friends and those who inspire me is very important. Family time is very important, and I became even more initiative. I became able to access gratefulness. The possibility of this was a seed that had been planted by a grief counselor very early on after Pete died. She said, maybe sometime in the future, you'll be able to access gratefulness. That was something that I pictured, a long road and a little dot at the end, and that was gratefulness in my mind. I couldn't see it then. Someone asked me even back then, what are you grateful for? And I remember saying, oh, let's see, that Pete already died, and so I don't have to go through it again. And she literally looked at me and said, that's what you're grateful for? And I said, yeah, yeah, that's all I got right now. That's what I'm grateful for. But I learned to access gratefulness, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But I also learned to be in touch with my values, adventure, connection, family, things that are so important. Those are just some of them that are not just a good idea, but necessary for optimal life. So, through all these, instead of, oh my gosh, we were married 30 years, my future was just taken from me, I was able to switch that to, I got to be married 30 years to a wonderful man. That pivot was huge for me. One day, through all the work, gratitude was there, just like the counselor had predicted, and I would no longer be a victim.
Judy, I love your focus on healing and learning and rebuilding. And you took and gleaned from your experience and pulled out the gratitude and saw your life differently. That's really powerful that you changed your whole mindset. When you discovered that you could move forward, where did you go from here? How did this lead you into your life of, yes, I can grow. Yes, good things can happen to me. How did that next chapter unfold for you?
Well, I took coaching had helped me so much. So I took coach training and learned how to do that to be able to help other people. Um, I've learned that change and healing is in the doing, not always before. So it's like I've learned to jump out and just do it. One of those things was 5.5 years in. I hadn't been out on a date yet, and I really was not interested. But part of me did think, what if I did do that? So I prayed in 2023 to go out on one date in 2024, just one, and mainly to be brave because I knew nothing was promised. And that was uncomfortable. That was more uncomfortable literally than moving to Alaska, because I was just like, I don't know what I do. A friend of mine and I were talking, and she had been widowed too, and I remember putting mascara on before a date and thinking, this is stupid. This is so stupid. I haven't done this. Why do I have to do this over again 30 years later? So it was a lot of that was just a cover up for being scared. That's all that was. But yeah, a lot of things. So what would I say if you're seeking a chapter two? Let God rescue you first. That's what I had to do. Heal with God. Often, if we're still functioning from a place of hurt, we become edgy and unfiltered. I don't care what anyone thinks. I'm going to say what I think. That kind of usually that means if we're operating in a defensive posture like that, there's usually a wound which creates a chip on our shoulders. And that has a rub with people. People can smell and feel that bitterness because it surfaces as an indication of undealt with pain. So do the work. If you are wounded, as I was, do the work to heal because you will take that pain and perspective with you. This way, you can step into a new relationship, a new job, a new recreated life with a new perspective as a new person, with all the beautiful colors that experience has provided you with.
So through your spiritual life, you got healing, you went after coaching, you went after grief counseling, and you just continued to work on any area of your life that felt like it wasn't receptive, it sounds like. Like, I feel a resistance here. You pushed through, putting makeup on to go on a date in spite of how you felt and say, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to say yes to life. So, Judy, tell us what happened and where you're at today with this new relationship in your life.
Well, I have been married to a wonderful man for 4 months now. Mark had also lost his wife of 30 years. We honor each other's pasts while we're very grateful to be able to create a new life together. We have 7 kids. We have 3 grandchildren with one on the way. We're split between Chicago and Alaska, and I could not have written this story in a million years if I had used my greatest imagination. So the reality is, we both feel the sting of losing our spouses of 30 years. I think we should. I don't want that to leave because that was our histories, but we can hold grief and joy and know that God was in everything. God was in every prayer. He was in every tear. He was in all the chaos when we felt this is more than I could handle. He was just waiting. He was preparing us. And so yeah, that's my life now. It's wonderful.
Judy, I love the way you have worked through your pain. You brought about a new life, a new vision. And I know so many women need that. They feel stuck. They feel like, what am I going to do now? Everything is lost. And you rebuilt your life. I want other women to have the opportunity that you have and the hope that you have. Is there something that you could give us? Tell us a little about what you do now and how you help other women.
The grief therapy was wonderful, but combining it with coaching was the sweet spot. That's what really helped me to get a place to move forward and find a path forward. And so I see so much value in the idea of coaching and in what I'm doing now. It's a powerful way forward. It's a way to get a vision for what God has for us. So I now work as a professional and personal development coach for Live Your Vision. I was so excited to be able to do that because that helped change my life in numerous ways. So I help women access their strengths and treasures from their stories. We all have them and be able to move forward with a purpose. This is done by helping women find their unique value that's undefined by grief, by loss, by assumptions, or by any kind of limiting beliefs.
Mhm.
So if you want to contact me, I would love to talk to you. I'd love for you to reach out at Judy McCreary, McCreary is my last name, lyv@gmail.com. We can help you find the agency to be the woman that God has created you to be.
Thank you, Judy. That was so inspiring just to hear how you pivoted from the darkest place in your life to a place of light and hope again. And I absolutely believe so many women out there need what you have. They absolutely do, Judy. And you've been so inspiring. You didn't give up. You found the tools, you found a way. God led you to where you needed to go. And the fact that you were married again happily with a new brood of a family is just spectacular. And I just want to thank you for coming here and sharing your story. You've inspired me so much, and I know you've given so many people hope, and we truly appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much. It's been an honor to be here.
If something you heard today resonates with you and you're feeling restless and ready for change, and you know the patterns in your life aren't giving you the results you want anymore, I want to invite you to a complimentary vision talk with me. Together, we'll address the real obstacles and get to the heart of what's holding you back. Just comment in the link below, "I'm ready," and I'll contact you.